So moving on to section 3 of chapter 1, understanding the process of public communication. Communication is shared meaning between 2 or more people, and in our case, you can be doing that in a speech to 5 or more. And parts of the process are the people, of course, speaker, receiver, and senders or receivers, and realize they often overlap in the real world. If you're having a conversation, you guys are talking over each other, that's okay. There's a context, which can be historical, recent, or further back. Okay, anything you may do, this can affect the speaker credibility. Have you seen this person before give a speech? Probably not in your case, but have you seen them do a presentation in class and they do a good job? Then you're aware of it. Cultural, a system of learned values, symbols, language, and norms that we have. And this is the idea that, we value public speaking in Western society. That goes back to the ancient Greeks. Social, the roles of the senders and receivers. I mean, is it a teacher and a student? Are you 2 students to each other? So those social roles change things. And a physical location, in your case, is going to be in your school. I'm not sure what rooms you guys will have set up to go in to be able to record yourselves, but hopefully they've got something available for you. Context, a little poster I made. Circumstances often need their effects explained thoroughly. We need to understand the context to be able to do a good job. Moving on here, then there is the message. That's the information that's being sent. It can be informal and spontaneous, or like speeches for this course, formal and intentional, planned and practiced. Okay. The channel is how the message gets from the sender to the receiver. In your case, it's going to be an oral speech delivered to people in the room. But for others watching it who might watch later, they might be watching the recording. I'm going to be watching the recording like you are watching this recording. There is mass communication like radio and television or streaming services. There is mediated, anything through a computer, social media, or various apps that sort of do things. Especially on social media, people tend to put in a lot of times only the great things about themselves. So if you sort of scroll through your, Snapchat or TikTok or even Facebook, if you're old school, as you go through these things, look at all these great things they're doing. You might feel badly that you're not doing anything cool. Post something, okay? Face-to-face communication, which is what you'll be doing. But then again, in our case, because it's online, you'll be delivering this face-to-face to your classmates, but I'll have a mediated version through a recorded video. And it's linear, more immediate in terms of versus a conversation, because there's no redo. You're doing it then. If you make a mistake, just correct yourself and move on. Don't make the mistake worse by saying, oh man, I screwed up. Don't do that. Just say, I meant to say, correct yourself, move on. Okay. Feedback. This is the giving or receiving information about the effectiveness of a message. Usually this is going to be nonverbal from your audience, their movement, their expressions, their eye contact, laughter if you say something funny. Okay. Avoid asking questions, as I mentioned earlier, that they can answer out loud. Instead of saying, how many of you are planning to go to college? Then several of them might say, I am. Or you can just say, raise your hand if you're planning on going to college. Then you get a nonverbal hand raise versus a potential verbal, I plan to. Okay. Noise are interruptions in the communication process. This is not just physical noise. It's anything that gets in the way of the message being sent or received. Okay. Could be the room or the environment. Maybe the room, the heating and air conditioning system is really loud and it makes mechanical sounds, or the temperature's cold or it's too hot, and those things can affect how we feel. Okay. The listener's health. If they're not feeling well, they may not be thinking about things and paying as good attention. If the sender's got some physical issues, it's going to be tougher for them. Listeners might be thinking about they've got to give their speech, or they may have just finished this and gone, oh, I'm so relieved now. So there's lots of things that it can be, because that's the sort of psychological aspect of things. Stress and anxiety if I'm waiting to give my speech. Past experiences, my last one didn't go so well, or maybe my past experience is my last one went well, so hopefully this one will as well. Or any kind of personal concerns. My boyfriend, my girlfriend is not, all kinds of things in our lives. Okay. And these are, again, both for the speaker and the audience. So we're trying to, again, focus on the task and kind of push those things to the side for the time being. The outcome is the result of the communication. Okay. This is looking for a change in the audience or context. Okay. We want them to be informed and do nothing, or they're going to be informed rather and do nothing, or they're going to be informed and take some kind of action. That would be a movement to persuade or convince. And this book, there are multiple types of communication models, from very simple sender sends a message through a medium, receiver gets it, decodes it, maybe some feedback. Okay, the transactional model is a little bit different. This is emphasis on a relationship and trying to create co-meaning. You want to know about your audience and make sure they understand why your speech, why your message should be important to them. Okay, so encoding is putting the words or thoughts into words or symbols. Decoding is the process of trying to understand those words and symbols, and sometimes the meaning and what gets encoded doesn't get decoded the same way. Think like a game of telephone when you guys go through the classroom or telegraph and it sort of changes. A symbol is simply a word, icon, picture, object, something to represent something. I'm going to talk about three main things. First, we're going to do this. Second, we're going to do this. Third, you can do those sort of flags, symbols, things for students as well. So concept, a thing or experience is what a symbol is used. Any of those things are used to represent. Okay, types of meaning. Denotative meaning, this is the objective or literal meaning of the word. Okay, this is a mechanical pencil. Okay, and so if I say mechanical pencil, that's what we're referring to. Okay, this is shared by most people who use the word, and if they're using the word, they kind of know what it means. Connotative is a subjective, cultural, or even personal meaning. A friend of mine and I, when I was in school, we loved George Carlin, and there was a joke line he used all the time, "How's your dog?" And that was a personal, we had a different meaning for us, and it meant in terms of his joke. Okay, something you guys might understand is the line, "What's up?" We're not asking what's up there, oh, the ceiling, the vent for the heating and air conditioning. That's not what we're asking, because your response is supposed to be, "Not much." You, "What's up?" "Not much." You, okay. You're not really asking what's above us. It's a greeting script. And if someone deviates from it, we kind of get sometimes possibly a little upset, because now we have to kind of deal with them saying something. Hey, Marcus Cicero, from 106 to 43 BCE, that's before Common Era, which is the way of saying BC. By the way, AD or CE, which is Common Era, AD does not stand for after death. It stands for the Latin phrase Anno Domini, or Year of Our Lord. Okay. Marcus Cicero, a famous person speaking in rhetoric, had some canons or laws of rhetoric or public speaking. And these are the invention, creating the context, a disposition, the organization and logic of our arguments, especially in a persuasive speech. Okay, a style, choosing the right level and vocabulary. We're looking for horizontal communication. If you talk down to your audience, they will feel like you're, think that they're children and they don't understand. If you talk above them with terms and things that they don't know, then they won't understand it. We're trying to aim for a horizontal communication, that I'm talking at their level. If you research some topic and become sort of a little expert at something, it's good to peer review your speech with someone else, because you might jump from one thing to the next thing, which makes sense to you because you've researched this topic. And they may say, "How did you get from here to here?" And in that case, now I've got to sort of make an explanation statement in there to sort of horizontalize that communication. Memory is memorizing famous speeches to learn good techniques. Again, this is Cicero's idea. They should do really long speeches, because in ancient Greece, in the Dark Ages, before Homer, we're talking about oral communication was how people pass things on. And then delivery, that's the sort of non-verbal things we do as part of the communication process. Okay. Formal speaking dates back to 500 BCE. Yes, that's a long time ago. Okay, but there are reasons why it's still important in the world today. Employers, as I said, want good communication skill. It's the top three so-called soft skills, the skills you need to do your exact job, whether that's being a teacher or an engineer or a software designer, whatever those things are. Those are your hard skills. The soft skills are these things to be able to share your ideas. Okay, that we should train to advocate, to do some leading, or even asking for a raise. These are all things that why they're important when it comes to you and a job. You can use this in future courses, okay? I use what I learned in other courses. Most students will say at a college level that what I learned, if you had a good instructor in your class, you should have used some of these techniques in other courses. And they help you become a better listener who's more informed and more critical, okay? Remember, timing is everything. So prepare your speech, be prepared, be on time, and time within the time limits, all of which require being ready in advance and practice. Okay, it requires muscle memory, and that's where the practice comes in. Where do I want to put in my gesture for emphasis? Okay, like a sport, practice your voice, eye contact, gestures, and movement. You're not reading a paper to your class. You're talking to them as if it's a conversation. So most of the time, you should be looking at them, glancing down at your notes. Okay. Context and relationship dimension. Again, this is sort of the issue we're talking about here. The context is the content rather is the information, not context. Content and relation dimension. Content is the information that's being sent, and the relationship is that trust, respect, and credibility I build because I've done my research. I've practiced things. I'm up here and seem prepared and ready to go. Those things all help build your credibility. Importantly, get a couple of good things done up front, and you build sort of what's called a halo effect. And then if I do a good citation, for example, to give help build my credibility and do a great one first on, some of the other ones like we kind of might not have all the same information, but you'll still respect them for it. Okay. Again, the credibility comes from that evidence, our appeals, our wording, and our nonverbals. Are we looking at the audience? Or are we looking down the entire time? Okay. Emulation, the sincerest form of flattery, okay, not imitating or copying, but following a general model, which we'll talk about in future things here, and incorporating the strategies of other successful speakers. Hey, he did this or she did that, and I like that. Maybe you can try emulating that as well. And then know your strengths and weaknesses. Extroverts, we think, oh, those are going to be the best people at public speaking because they can get up and talk and entertain and do all that stuff because they're really outgoing. But because they're so used to being able to do that, they might not prepare enough or practice enough, which can hurt their actual speech delivery. Introverts often prepare more because they're worried. You would be amazed the number of people who are entertainers and performers who on a personal one-to-one level are very introverted, but when they get up on the stage, they've learned to work through that to do the job that they want to do. And remember always the power of a story. Remember narratives. We remember stories. Think about that great movie you went to see, and it was so good, you were so ingrained in it, you can recall up to 85 to 95% of the movie. You can come out of the movie with your friend that you saw it with and spout off the dialogue from certain scenes because they were so impactful for you. Okay? So we wanted to talk about stories and remember the narratives. Anecdotes and narrative illustrations, these things help people remember, and they will remember those more than the content, the specific details, except for maybe a few big details. Be careful with too many statistics. We'll talk about that later on. John Dewey, a famous educator from a long time ago, said education is not just from experience, but reflecting on that thing. Okay, so I went through the learning. I did this. Now I reflect on it and go like, what do I need to do and change? And that's important for everything from taking notes to taking notes on paper to taking notes on a computer. If I reflect on it and go back and look at it, that's the important part of education. And to wrap things up here, a good friend of mine, not a good friend, but a friend of mine I know, Rabbi Michael Cohen, who's known as the Tech Rabbi. I've met him at several education tech conferences. And he had this poster. We talked about fail, first attempt in learning. And he said, but it's failure because the first attempt at learning, you might fail, but it's failure unless reflection exists. Okay, so if we reflect on it, and he is, of course, then pulling in John Dewey. Okay, failure, as he says, is an inevitable part of any worthwhile journey, but it isn't the destination. So we're going to fail in some of our practices. That's okay. Our goal is to get better throughout the semester. Dr. Pulley for Chapter 1, the communication process.